Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you here as we continue on with the WWE Network's collection of the WCW WarGames collection. This one, of course, coming from Fall Brawl of 1996, which will put us right in the very beginning of the nWo versus WCW. I can honestly tell you that it honestly seems like it's really early into the nWo versus WCW feud for them to be going into WarGames, but this really plays into what the nWo versus WCW feud was going to. Of course, you can know at this point that Eric Bischoff sees that the nWo storyline is just blowing up bigger than he ever thought it would be. He thought that basically he was finding a way to have an interpromotional feud within his own promotion, with the nWo basically starting up its own promotion and just building and building and building. Of course, this storyline would go into the dying days of WCW, but of course it would be an entire year later when we finally really got the payoff of what the nWo versus WCW would be, with that Starrcade 97, Sting versus Hogan. That should have been where Sting put the championship on the line against the nWo, or the nWo storyline, of course, would have to be broken. And just sort of everybody would have to go their own separate ways. Of course, everyone would still work for WCW, but it would be a long time before we ever saw the teaming up of the nWo guys together again. It's not the way it panned out, but this honestly played out to be a very good WarGames. Of course, this was 10 times better than the 1995 edition of WarGames that I just reviewed a minute ago. I think that this is probably going to be better than the next WarGames from 1997 that I'm going to watch. But of course, this would be the nWo, but at this point, we'd only have 4 wrestlers and 1, I guess you can say, manager, even though he was sort of looked at as the owner or the money behind the nWo, with that being Ted DiBiase. Of course, we would have Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, and we would have Hollywood Hulk Hogan. On the payoff that got us to WarGames, we would see Sting leaving in the nWo limo, with the limo where he was confronted by Lex Luger. We go into WarGames not really knowing who the 4th member of each team is going to be. Before WarGames, we see Luger, Flair, and Arn Anderson having a promo in the back, basically where they are being asked who the 4th member of their team is going to be. And they're giving a promo really not saying who their team is going to pick as their 4th. Of course, there is no promo with the nWo, but much like at Bash at the Beach, when it was only Hall and Nash going up against Sting, Luger, and Savage, they almost act as if they don't even need a 4th guy. That they're just going to take it down, and that's going to be how it's going to be. I can honestly tell you that even though, like I said, that this seems rushed, the progression that gets us to here, very good. I think the Hall and Nash both debuted in April. Of course, they were going to have a match at the Great American Bash, which I think at the last minute, they pulled back in order to get to Bash at the Beach, sort of thinking that, them sort of just showing up and attacking people. Of course, the Great American Bash, they put Eric Bischoff through a table, getting a little bit more heat to get to Bash at the Beach. Really good stuff. Of course, at Road Wild in August is when Hogan would beat the Giant to gain the championship. And if you're not watching all of the nitros to get you to eat pay-per-view to pay-per-view, even if you are, it didn't really make sense that the Giant just lost his championship to Hogan, is now a member of the nWo here at Fall Brawl, which would happen in September, is now a member of the team. before we see WarGames. One of the biggest matches that is on the show is right before it. It ends up being the Giant going up against Randy Savage. The Giant gets a lot of help from the nWo. Savage basically is fighting off 4 guys at once, and he has laid out to the point when you know Savage is not going to be the 4th man to help Team WCW in this match. This match starts out with Scott Hall coming down, led to ringside by Ted DiBiase. He is met by Arn Anderson. The match starts where they're kept in the cell for 5 minutes alone. We all know how this is going to happen. nWo wins the coin flip. Arn is beat on by Scott Hall, but almost right as the minute comes up for the person to come out of the back, he hits the big spine buster. We're all hoping that Ric Flair is going to come down and help out Arn, but it ends up being Kevin Nash who comes down to take the advantage, beating up Arn Anderson for 2 minutes before Lex Luger makes his way down. Then we are met by Hollywood Hulk Hogan coming out of the back, which then finally brings out Ric Flair. Of course, we had seen the sort of treaty between the 4 Horsemen and Team WCW, where basically they knew the only way they were going to be able to take out the nWo was as if they were able to sort of part their differences and fight the same fight together, and go from there. I can honestly tell you that I don't even know who the other 2 members of the 4 Horsemen were, or if just the 4 Horsemen was just basically Arn and Flair. I'm guessing, Benoit had a match against Jericho early on the card. He might have been the 3rd guy, and maybe Mongo was just nowhere to be seen this night. I'm not sure if that's who the Horseman is at the time, but it doesn't really go along with what we're going to. Once we finally get down to the 4th member of the nWo coming out, even before the counter is on the screen, we see Sting making his way down to the ring, where basically the crowd doesn't even react to what is going on. But what plays into the storyline of basically Arn, Flair, and Luger already having their mind made out that Sting had turned on Team WCW. Arn is the first guy to attack Sting once he gets into the ring. I couldn't really make out if Flair and Luger tried to attack him, but Sting did make his way around and exchange punches with everyone in the ring. Once the 2 minutes is finally up, we see the real Sting making his way down to the ring, where he gets into the cage and he fires up on everybody, attacking all 4 members of the nWo at once, taking all of them out, while Flair, Arn, and Luger all stand off to the other side of the cage, basically watching, trying to figure out why the hell there are 2 Stings in the ring at once. We then have Luger and Sting not exchanging any punches, but just having a verbal confrontation in the ring, where basically Sting says, "Is that enough proof for you?" and then tells Luger the good old-fashioned, tells him where to stick it, I guess you could say, is the best way to put it. Sting then walks out of WarGames, walks out of the match, leaving them, with a 4-on-3 advantage, where Sting he's gone. He's out of it. Hollywood Hulk Hogan gets up. He starts attacking Luger. Everybody takes out everybody. And the nWo is basically solely attacking everyone using the 4-on-3 advantage, where they jump on top of Luger, making him tap out, ending WarGames with nWo as the victors. We then see the nWo beating Luger all the way up the ramp, where they are met by Arn Anderson and Flair, where we finally seem to have a fight again outside of WarGames, where they are met by Randy Savage, who runs in to finally make this a 4-on-4 fair fight. Savage is solely attacking Hogan, where they bring the fight back to the ring. This, of course, is trying to sell the next pay-per-view, which is Halloween Havoc, where Savage had already been named the #1 contender, where it's going to be Savage against Hogan for the championship. We then have the Giant making his way back down to the ring, where he picks up Savage, delivering the choke slam. We then have all the other members of the nWo beating on Savage. We're finally Miss Elizabeth, who at this time was a member of the Four Horsemen, leading Ric Flair to the ring, but she still showed compassion for her former husband, Randy Savage, where she did not want him to be beat down anymore. Basically, this led to the nWo shoving Miss Elizabeth on top of Savage, spray painting Miss Elizabeth, trying to gain heat for the big match at Halloween Havoc, and them showing us that the nWo once again found a way to beat WCW at their own game, winning WarGames. We are told that there are certain stipulations that WCW will need now to abide by, that the nWo is gaining an advantage here. They're getting what they want, even though they don't tell us what those things are, but maybe those are just, they need to have the nWo referee Nick Patrick referee their matches. I don't think they had asked for their own show yet, because I think that was a stipulation at Starrcade that year, where they almost gave WCW Nitro to the nWo, and then was going to have Thunder be the new WCW show. So we'll see what this brings, because I'm watching this on the WWE Network on the Collections. 1997 is about to start right now. Another, this one, of course, is the Four Horsemen against the nWo. Let's get right into that one. Talk about it in a few minutes. Peace out.